have you here, and I think that Linas or Yeva will help you with the PowerPoint presentation and all technical issues. And
so thank you very much for introduction. And like to be more precise, I represent the Warsaw University of Social Sciences and Humanities, which is the only private university in Poland. The rest was, of course, true. So I'll be happy. So I can switch here.
Yeah? Just to add, you see that the title is Vesudihara and Refugees Picture in Olga Korevo Report.
Okay, so I'm going to use both devices. It will be just easier to read for me. So thank you very much for the invitation. I'm always very honored to cooperate with Sudihara Diplomats for Life Foundation here in Kaunas, and I very frequently talk not only to Sudihara, who was always the major of my research, but I also emphasize the role of Polish diplomacy and Polish government in helping the refugees who were Polish citizens when escaping to via the Soviet Union to Japan and then to other countries or to Shanghai. Over this time, of course, being fully aware that the audience may not be so familiar with the person of Tadeusz Romer, the Polish ambassador in Japan, who organized the help, I decided to focus on a very small topic of the whole refuge, which is basically not known. It was recently discovered in Polish military archives. I was able to find 3 reports of Polish soldiers. They were not Jews. First of all, we need to emphasize that they were not Jews. They were prisoners of war who escaped from the camps. It was still quite possible under German occupation because the weekends were off from work, so they traveled from Pomeranian, from Stettin at the time, via Bydgoszcz, nowadays in central Poland, and to Lithuania. So I'd like to focus on one case, on the report, a very long report, almost 100-page report presented to Tadeusz Romer, Polish ambassador to Japan. Olgierd Korewo was the native Lithuan. He was very dangerous for Germans, we need to say this. That's why he used his fake identity to escape from Poland, from the German-controlled zone to Kaunas. And I will tell Olgierd Korewo's story. He is not under this name on Sudihara list. He used his fake identity. That's why for many years he wasn't identified by the researchers, because he used the name of a person who passed away in Vilnius at the beginning of war, a Polish citizen, and he just got his papers. So using these papers in front of Soviet authorities, in front of Lithuanian authorities, even though the Lithuanian authorities knew very well who he was, he got all the papers, official papers, and went to Japan. And from Japan he went to Canada to come back to Great Britain and fight with the Polish army here in Europe. So let me go briefly to his story. Like, little is known about these Polish soldiers who came to Kaunas in 1940. Basically, they were prisoners of war. They managed to get out from the camps. One, as I told, like Olgierd Korewo was from Szczecin. Another one, who I really hardly sought any information about, was Mr. Serkiewicz, another Lithuanian who escaped from Częstochowa, also like the Silesian district in contemporary Poland, and came to Kaunas. All of them had a very interesting information provided to Ambassador Romer. Like, we knew that in Lithuania, in Kaunas, we will get help. We knew that there is our friend, Japanese ambassador, and Lithuanian authorities, they understand our point, which is clearly mentioned in the report, which is also very, very important for my future research. Olgierd Koreiwo, his story is unknown for many reasons. First of all, he didn't have any children. He didn't have a wife who provided anything to any archives. He just passed away childlessly in Great Britain, and his friends just provided the papers, which were assumed that they are very important, to Polish Military Museum. And it was just left in many boxes, which were just discovered recently. He went to Stettin. He was taken to Stettin after the defeat of Polish army, and then he was moved to Stargard Szczeciński, nowadays, so in the Pomerian district, to the camp. As I said before, it was possible to move for visiting your family still in 1939, and he did so. He went to Bydgoszcz and then to Włochy. Nowadays, Włochy is a part of a district of Warsaw, in the western part of Warsaw, where his family lived. So he decided to, when being close to Warsaw, he decided to go to the Lithuanian embassy, which was still there in Warsaw, and he said, 500 years of our Polish-Lithuanian friendship was something very important, so they will help me. So he went to the Lithuanian embassy. He met the ambassador, he met the military attaché, and they said, yes, please travel to Kaunas, we will help you. So it is the story that is not, the war story, but Kaunas, as I said, was very important. Like, in many, many reports of Polish soldiers, it is said that in Kaunas there is our friend, Japanese consul. So we need to get there, and he will help us with going outside Soviet Union, at that time still Lithuania, outside Europe, to travel to the United States or Canada, where the Polish soldiers are going to be trained and come back to Europe to fight with Germany. So this was this idealistic view in the first year of war. He did so. He did so, met Sugihara here in this house directly, which was still very interesting in his reports. How was the cooperation going on between Polish soldiers and Sugihara and the rest of refugees? It won't be a very sweet story, we have to admit. And as a researcher, I need to be honest with my research. That's why this report is very difficult to read. Maybe I'm just thinking too much about the tragedy of the people who are described there, Jewish people, Polish people, and suddenly, step by step in the whole report, there comes a problem of the relations, Polish-Jewish relations, and we have to be honest with this. So in Lithuania, it happened that suddenly Polish soldiers weren't allowed to enter the British consulate, who was working for Poland to issue all these papers. They came here to Sugihara house, which is said in the report, and they got visas directly. All the documents were signed by Sugihara, or he contacted directly the British consulate and asked for the favor for Polish military officers. We can see it also from the documents from Polish government. Polish government said that officially to Tadeusz Romer, who was just coordinating all this action in Japan, that if any male, they don't care, Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, is escaping and is providing help for Polish government, he needs to be in the Polish army if he's in the proper age. So if you decide to use the Polish authorities' help to travel to the US, to travel to Canada, you need to join Polish military army because it's your duty as a Polish citizen. And there are many Sugihara refugees who used this way and even unfortunately passed away in the Battle of England, for example, which is also very well shown in Polish archives. Olgierd Koreiwo managed to come to Japan in November 1941, very, very fast he got there, and very, very fast he traveled in December to the United States. So this is the end of the Sugihara story, let's call it Sugihara Visa's story. He passed away childless in London 1976 or 77. We even don't know this week because he was a normal worker there in London and he didn't stay in touch with Poland because of our difficult history and not allowing Polish officers to come back to Poland. That's why I would like to claim here during this conference that we need to research, as the researchers of the Jewish history, the Jewish refugees history, we need to research Polish-Lithuanian history of 1939, of 1940, just to add our narration to the Sugihara story, because it's frequently forgotten. It's the history of Lithuanian-Japanese relations, of Japanese government, but we forget about very important aspect, about Polish-Lithuanian cooperation that enabled many refugees to come here, to come to Kaunas, what is also visible in the documents. This is the part of the Koreiwo report. It's in Polish language, so let me tell briefly what's written here. So within 2 weeks, Koreiwo decides to travel to England. And the only route known, not only because of the friendship, as he says, and this is also, it may be controversial after our relations till 1938. However, in 1939, he says like, oh, Polish-Lithuanian relations were always great, we were the Commonwealth, so I'm going to Lithuania, I'll get their help. Only 1 week lasted, organizing everything to get to Kaunas with the help of military attaché, who is here described as the Lithuanian Wałęsa. So it is formalized in his paper. He said like he was said in the Lithuanian embassy in Warsaw, everything will be okay in Kaunas. There will be a care taken on you in Kaunas from our Lithuanian side. However, when we come to the story of the refugees and the story of being here in Kaunas for a Polish citizen, for a Polish officer, well known in military circles, several problems arise. First problem is that even though he was promised by Lithuanians to be helped, they didn't do anything when he came to Kaunas, so he was left without money, left without help, and only, shaking hands and everything. But not only Lithuanians in these difficult situations were a problem for Koreiwo, also Poles. As I said in the introduction, a vast number of Jewish refugees started to come to Kaunas. That's why without money it was very difficult to get to the British embassy where Polish people worked, because this Polish section of issuing the papers was moved, so the same people worked in the British section. So he wasn't treated there well. They didn't want to help him. So Koreiwo started to use his pre-war connections to get away to Riga, for example, but it was not possible that time. He was even for a short time in touch with the prisoners of war on the Lithuanian territory, Polish prisoners of war, and for many weeks nothing was happening. However, as I said before, with help came Japanese consul, Chiune Sugihara. It is extremely frequently emphasized in the reports that he was a great friend of Poles, and not only he issued visas to the Polish citizens who were Jews, but in the same time he was issuing all the papers for Polish soldiers. So for Polish citizens who planned to travel to England or to England via the United States. This is how Koreiwo described Sugihara in his report, a man with an eminently positive attitude toward Poles. He surrounded himself only with Poles, and even when later came the fashion of making Japanese visas, because only these visas were issued without restrictions, when a whole wave of refugees rushed to the Japanese consul, and the consulate could not, for technical reasons, keep up with the repeal of visas, Mr. Sugihara engaged to help several Poles in his work. Of course, I got the Japanese visa immediately for free. This is also very interesting in the field of studying the visas history. Each time it is written that if you were a soldier, you got all the papers for free. If you were the refugee, you had to pay little money, but you had to pay for the visa. In Koreiwo's report, we can find that how the refugees were seen by this officer. At the beginning of August 1940, the application of Jewish refugees for documents certifying Polish citizenship issued by the British legation was described there. And it won't be a very positive for, basically for when we think about helping each other. It won't be like this. It was a period of an influx of refugees, mostly Jews, to Kaunas. It was common knowledge that the consulates would be closed in the next few days. So recently, everyone who did not have one yet wanted to get a certificate, just in case. Our section did not make any difficulties anymore and issued it to everyone, without even looking at the documents authorizing the issuance of the certificate. And this is a very important sentence. This is a sentence repeated frequently in Tokyo when checking the identity of people. Polish ambassador was sent the telegram from London, from the Polish government, that many Russian spies are going to travel together with Jewish refugees. So he knew from the beginning, from 1914, sorry, that they didn't check the documents in Kaunas. So he must do it very, very carefully. Hundreds of Jews waited their line outside the section door. They gave a lot of money for settling or speeding up their case. There were many intermediaries. They were making cash, and that's what Mr. Kowal suggested to me. During the month of August, I collected over 1,000 kitas. Yes, I am not proud of showing you this part, because, you know, those were not Jews, those were Polish soldiers who were declined help for anybody. There were different bribes in the Polish military circles as well. However, one of the way of getting money, speeding up the thing, was getting the money from Polish citizens to speed up their case. So how the activity of the Polish section at the British consulate was described? The activity was limited. The mass issuance of certificates without consulting the documents authorizing it. Therefore, in the future, they should not constitute about the Polish citizenship. This is, I decided to cite this part to emphasize also the great role of Tadeusz Romer. He's very frequently forgotten. We talk about Sugihara, we talk about Zwardęty, we forget about Tadeusz Romer. His great job there in Suruga was just confirming that those people were Polish citizens So the Polish government could guarantee to Japanese government that it will take care on all the Jews. So even though the material help was provided by Jewish institutions, and there's no doubt about it, this is also what Romer said, the care of letting into the citizens and checking they are not spies, because it would break Polish-Japanese relations at the time, was the major obligation. So he was informed from the very beginning. There's a problem here in Kaunas, with inside the Polish section, because of the bribes, because of the speeding up, and mass refuge coming out here. So the problem was that Polish soldiers were not allowed into the British consulate. Koreiwo showed the important role of Sugihara played for Polish internees. I cite the Japanese consul, a great friend of Poles. Sugihara, still when he was in Kaunas, he called the British legation to which, as reported by Koreiwo, Poles, non-Jews, it was emphasized, so non-Jewish origins, were not admitted, and persuaded the British to issue a visa for the Navy officer Stanisław Serka, who received his self-conduct after the liquidation of the Polish section. When the officers ran out of funds for telegrams, applications, and tickets, Sugihara gave them around 200 litas at the time, which is confirmed by different documents which were issued, and Romer wanted to pay them back in Japan to Japanese authorities. So I want to make this part so important, because very frequently, as I said at the beginning, we forget about the Polish-Lithuanian relations here. We forget about the role of Polish government. So we say like, yeah, the vast number of Jews, they came via Soviet Union. We need to remember that they didn't want to become Soviet citizens. They still, when being Polish citizens, they could go out from Soviet Union. In other case, they wouldn't go out. And the great role of Polish diplomacy there in Tokyo, people who were sent to Suruga to check the papers, to verify their posts, and to guarantee as a Polish government to Japanese government that that Polish government will take out those people from Japan. This is also confirmed in Japanese archives. So just to summarize, let me show you how the route from Kaunas to Vladivostok and to Japan was described by Koreiwo. It's a little bit different from many testimonies we have, because it was the beginning of the vast refuge. So Koreiwo said that the procedure of applying for a transit visa through the Soviet Union, tickets and funds for departure was quite difficult, but because he was Polish officer. So his efforts differed from the departures of Jewish refugees, and when he went to Soviet consulate, he fell into a fire of questions, because Soviet already knew that he was trying to escape somewhere west via Sweden, maybe via Latvia, so it was quite problematic for him. There was a man named Panov, the head of the intelligence service from the Soviet side. So he interrogated Koreiwo for a long time, for an hour. He asked about everything. And what is very important, and please remember that he used fake name. So it wasn't, that they will catch him so easily. He needed to sign that he was spy for the Soviet Union in the United States, because he also had fake destination, because if there was the UK, they would know he's a soldier and he's going to fight. So he signed the papers to sign for Soviet Union in the US. So on September 21st, so quite late comparing to the issuing of visas, he got the permission, and within 5 hours he managed to buy a ticket and leave Kaunas at 9 p.m. Then, after his arrival to Japan, another military man, Stanisław Serko, and if you have any information about him, I will be grateful because we can't find anything in Polish archive about this soldier, decided to follow the same path. When being in Moscow, he left Vilnius on September 22 and came to Moscow the next day. The description was quite the same as the refugees. So the luggage was sold in Gudogaj, the Lithuanian Soviet Union border at the time, and people were accommodated. All the refugees plus Polish soldiers. Soldier at the time was accommodated at the Metropole Hotel at Teatralny Square, and they waited for the train to Vladivostok. They enjoyed coach trips that time, which was also confirmed by the refugees I interviewed. So he came to Vladivostok on October 6th, and this is quite different from the story that was given by the people in 1941, for example. So the refugees were transported to the port by coaches, and the control was superficial and lasted about 2 hours. Nothing special happened, comparing to the stories we hear from 1941. The travelers were taken to the Japanese ship Harumi Maru, which was going to Japan overnight. That's why he could not say anything to Romer about the Navy of Japan or whatever, or Soviet Navy. So this is the story of one man, a very, very small topic in all the research. But I feel and I think that researching the reports provided by the Polish soldiers who were not Jewish refugees is very important to get another point of view for all this story, also personal reports, but showing the situation of the refugees in the eyes of another Polish citizens. So thank you very much, and you can reach me easily via mail or social media. I will be very happy to answer your question now or then. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga, and thank you for the presentation. Short question still, I think, might be given, so please, dear colleagues.
Why were Polish soldiers not allowed in the British embassy? British consulate?
We basically don't know this. Why? It was a personal thing. Like in the whole report, and not only in this report, is that there were 3 Polish people still working. They were just moved from the Polish consulate, which was closed, and Brits they took over the responsibilities of Poland. So the thing is that Jewish refugees, they paid for the documents. So it was a good business, which was also a good business for Polish soldiers who helped to, for example, to translate frequently from Yiddish to Polish, or from Russian to Polish. So I think it was the question of money. It was a question of money and a great plan that collapsed really in the spring of 1940, because the visas, which is another topic of my research, another reports, were planned to be issued for Polish army to be moved to fight with the Allies, but they were killed in Soviet Union, but by Soviets. So the visas were there waiting. Then a big number came also. So like Polish soldier who is coming because he was somewhere in the West in the post camp. It's not a good customer. So what he can base on is the agreements that were taken by Japanese and Polish in 1939 and still in 1940, and Sugihara, that's why Sugihara was the great address here. Coming here, he knew what's going on, so he called the embassy and he said, like, those are my people, I'll send them.
I see very small comment or
not comment, question. The opposite question. Why the Japanese side was so keen to accept Polish refugees? Because the main route was, according to Mitkevich memoirs, to the west. Swedish direction was the most interesting, and allies were interested in professionals, military professionals for Polish army in the Allied ranks. Why Japanese?
because this route was closed. So for 30 pages of this report, for example, this report of Korevo, we can see what was the problem. It was a great problem. The whole action is in Polonga. They are trying to get to Latvia, and from Latvia going to Sweden, and they were caught.
That's the motive of the refugee. But
Yeah.
what's the motive of the Japanese side to accept them so pleasantly?
Because there were agreements made from 1939 till 1940, what is also in Daszkiewicz reports. So they knew that there was agreement between Japanese and Polish authorities of sending the soldiers. So if it was agreed, and there's no several hundreds of soldiers moved, but 5, 6, 10 coming like from time to time. It was just, in my opinion, just being fair to the agreements we made before.
Thank you, Olga, who is representing the University of Social Sciences and Humanities in Warsaw.